this is Sarah Brooks, and we're so glad to be here this morning. It's tremendous to be following the award winners. I hope that we can have some results. Thanks, Laura. That we can report. We're here to tell you about the beginning of a story that we're just embarking on at the Department of Veterans Affairs. So what we're going to do today is talk to you about our experience setting up the first cabinet-level chief customer office in the federal government, in the United States federal government. And we're going to talk about the fact that we're at the intersection of these two transformations. One is at VA, where we have set out to change our relationship with customers. The second intersecting thing that's going on is there is a much larger transformation going on in the US federal government right now, where many people, including ourselves, are trying to bring modern tools and practices, such as service design, into the way that the United States government serves its citizens. So we're going to get started on that, but first we're going to talk to you to just explain to you how we ended up in this interesting spot.
Yeah, I'm Sarah Brooks. So I'm currently serving as the Director of Insight and Design at Veterans Affairs. I've been there just over a year. Before government service, which I didn't know I was going to get into a year ago, I was working in San Francisco for 20 years, primarily focused on social innovation and sustainability. But I found out about this program, the Presidential Innovation Fellows Program, that takes people from private sector who've been doing design, technology, innovation, and brings them into government organizations for a one-year tour of duty to embed with those organizations to find needs and opportunities. And specifically, last year, there was a call out from Veterans Affairs to bring human-centered design into the organization. And I just thought, like, that's incredible. What does that mean? I'm very curious to find out. So I applied. I was lucky enough to get chosen. And you know, in addition to just understanding what they were hoping for from incorporating human-centered design, I also wanted to learn more about veterans and the culture of military service and what motivates people to join military service, since it wasn't something that I had a lot of exposure to prior to joining. So that tour of duty ended 3 weeks ago, but I'm continuing on now.
And so I'm Julia Kim. I am not a designer, so I'm tremendously honored to be here with you all because I call myself design adjacent for about 10, 15 years. As I said, I was out at an organization called the Institute for Creative Technologies. It was out in Los Angeles. And we were trying to push the next generation of interactive systems. So I got to play with things like virtual reality and artificial intelligence-based systems. But most of that was funded by the military, the United States military, which is the single biggest funder of research here in the United States. And what we were doing was somewhat disruptive to the military. So that gave me an up-close and personal view of what it is to try to change what you can imagine as a fairly entrenched organization, a fairly entrenched bureaucracy. Furthermore, through that, I spent about 10 years getting to know military people, as well as their families, and also saw them start to leave the military and see some of the challenges that they had. And these are folks who are incredibly driven, smart, and then going on and continuing to live their lives. So when I saw the opportunity to apply to join VA at this really interesting moment, I jumped at the chance and also was lucky enough to be chosen. So I am the Director of Special Programs, and you can think of me as the bureaucrat and Sarah as the designer. So what we're going to do now is talk about our customers, because that's really where things start. And there are 22 million veterans in the United States. About 9 million of them use VA services. And we are going to talk, Sarah's going to talk in a little bit about the work that she's been doing to try to understand them better. but I'm going to just tell you quickly about 2 veterans that I know, just to give you some context. First is my pal Tom. He's married. He has a Labradoodle. He also happens to be an F-16 pilot. He is now in the National Guard, which means that he only flies on the weekends, and during the week he actually works for a tech startup. So for Tom, he's got actually access to private health care through his own company as well as his wife's, or he could use VA. He has used VA services to go to school. He went back to school at Johns Hopkins and was able to use the GI Bill, which is a benefit that he earned. So that's Tom. Then there's Davey. Davey is a retired Master Sergeant Marine. He is a CrossFit fanatic. He's probably what you think of when you think of kind of the stereotypical Marine and military person. He is also a double amputee. He lost both of his lower limbs and had to get out of the Marine Corps. But the guy does not like to sit around. In fact, 3 months after he lost his limbs, he was standing at his best friend's wedding as the best man. And for those who know something about amputees, that's both a physical as well as a mental feat that he pulled off. But now he's also left with thinking about what his life is going to continue to be, because he wants to have a job, and he still has a lot of medical appointments that he has to go to. So finding things that can balance that, again, outside of a world that he had known and was used to, is a part of his challenge. So those are 2 of our 9 million customers at VA. We also support families and supporters of veterans. So spouses, children, as well as folks who just drive people to their appointments. We even amazingly have 1 child of a Civil War veteran still in the VA system. It was a very old Civil War veteran who then had a child who is now also very old. So that's our customer base. And as I said, Sarah's going to talk more about what they look like in more detail. But let me just quickly run through who VA is. And, we don't have the other slide. So VA is the second largest federal agency and the second largest federal agency. We have over 350,000 employees. So if you want to think about organizational change like folks were talking about, that is on par with a Fortune 10 company. We have 3 big categories of services. Healthcare is, I think, the one that folks know the most about. We're the largest healthcare system in the country by far. We have 150 hospitals all around the country and overseas. We have 800 outpatient clinics. We offer soup to nuts medical care for folks who need it. The second set of services that we offer are social services. We offer employment. We offer education services. We offer home loans. We are truly a mini government inside the federal government, and that has to be something we deliver against. And then we are a government agency, which makes us unique from a Kaiser or from local services. So if you think about any one of those 3, delivering on them in the private sector is not easy. VA, as a federal government agency, doesn't have a choice. We have to be good at all of them. Unfortunately, right now, VA is not. For those who are in the US and have seen the headlines, we at VA have not been delivering on the promise that we have made to veterans. And that is a commitment that everyone, I think, takes seriously, but as you think about it, trying to run and integrate an organization like I described with a customer base that has these unique challenges is not an easy problem. And then unfortunately, VA's made it harder for itself. We've made it harder for ourselves. So I'm going to talk quickly about kind of some of the root cause. I hear designers like root causes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about root cause issues that we've seen so far at 3 different levels: at the strategic, the operational, and the local. And really, all of it is a brittle system at all 3 levels, unfortunately. So first, at the strategic level, this is something I think that will be familiar to you all, which is is the military says we've been mistaking tactics for strategy. There hasn't been an overarching view of what business are we in and how are we going to best deliver on that for our customers. There has been a heavy focus on process reengineering in place, which has really been about patching over the existing system. You all in this room know better than lots of other folks that that can only get you so far. And so strategically, there just hasn't been a good orientation, and they've been trying to brute force and waterfall their way out of this. Operationally, the products and services also are not well designed. As I said, they've been focused a lot on the back end in this process reengineering, and there really hasn't been, we're calling design an underdeveloped muscle. Really, it's not developed at all inside VA. So there's certainly not any thought around trying to do this as a coordinated end-to-end journey along the lines of what you all think about every single day. Furthermore, operationally, we're deeply, deeply siloed. If you think about any of the largest companies that operate, I imagine many of them look the same, and we have that going on in spades, unfortunately. So the third level now, if we've gone strategic operational now, there's also just at the local human-to-human touch points. That has also not gotten enough attention. You can't, if you've, there's a saying, if you've walked into one VA facility, you've walked into one VA facility. Customer can't count on walking into one door and say, I know what I'm going to do, I know how to get it. They can't count on getting their question answered consistently. They ask 3 people the same question, get 3 different answers. And furthermore, the employees themselves, when they move around, they don't know what system they're operating in. And we're going to talk a little bit about the employee situation later. So the results, as you all know, is a fragmented, burdensome experience for our customers. And if you think about our customer base, we have folks with mental health issues. Imagine trying to navigate a system like that, a system that's committed, that our tax dollars go to try to deliver on it, and we're not. Even people who don't have mental health issues, who just have a job and a life, they are also challenged by this system. So we need to fix that. And on top of that, we've taken this brittle system and now we've increased the number of customers. As I said, we're a government organization, so our customers are able to come to us at any time and take advantage, to use the services that they've earned, and we want to deliver on that. We entered into the longest war. Whatever you think of it, the reality is those folks came back, and now they're entering the VA system. And we need to take care of all of those folks, and the system is just not equipped to do it right now. Okay, so that's all the bad news. Sarah's going to talk about what we're doing to try to turn this whole thing around.
We're fortunate to have Bob McDonald as our leader. He joined last August. He's a West Point grad. He did military service, and he spent 30 years in his career at Procter & Gamble, the last several of them as the CEO. So he really gets customer centricity. The minute that he walked in the door at VA, he said, we have to transform this culture. We need to become more customer-centric. That's how we're going to get this done. 3 months later, he hired a chief experience officer. We call it Veterans Experience. So Chief Veterans Experience Officer, Tom Allen, who's our boss. So Tom, his chief of staff, Walt, Julia, and I, in early January of this year, the 4 of us, set about to think about how to address these particular challenges that Julia just outlined. No big deal. So first, we knew that we needed to think about how we organize ourselves. What are the internal capacities we need in a customer experience organization in order to scale and diffuse our efforts? We needed to find a shared understanding of what customer experience is and find language for that resonated throughout all the lines of business in the organization. we knew we needed to understand our customers in a different way than we currently did. Something like 30% of VA employees are veterans themselves. So we hear a lot of, I'm a veteran, I understand what veterans need, which is kind of true and not true. And we also really wanted to foster a culture of design mindset at VA. So as you can imagine, this is a huge cultural change from this culture of very rule-bound, very command and control, to one that's supporting this very, very different way of working. So in terms of how we organized ourselves, we really wanted to prioritize the insight and design practice, as well as measurement, working at the local level, seeing and solving at the local level, distributed throughout the country, and through all the medical systems and regional office benefits offices and National Cemetery Administration. We wanted to be in charge of some of the important pieces of the enabling technical infrastructure that supported us understanding who our customers are and how they're taking advantage of our services, and operationalize. We knew we needed to figure out how to operationalize all the change through the organization. So we wanted to really develop this looking of end-to-end customer journeys for all of our customers. So where do we start? And also, who designs services at VA now? Or in general, who designs services for the government? And so interestingly, one of the answers is Congress and lawyers. Congress and lawyers play a huge part in policy that trickles down into service design for government services. It was something that was new to me. It's taken a lot of patience to reconcile and reckon with. I find that often Congress has a really good idea of an understanding of a basic need that customers have, but they will prescribe a solution that I can tell you is not rooted in design research. But we have to implement that solution, and our lawyers will interpret what that solution is, and they will define the operating bounds that we'll work within. So part of the trick that we've been using is to work with lawyers who really want to get to yes. Lawyers who don't want to find the strictest interpretation of the law and just say no and be done with it, but people who are willing to navigate this gray area with us so we can find more latitude to move and make the services work better for people through that broader interpretation. It's not easy. As a group, one of the things we did start doing together early in the winter was benchmarking customer service organizations that you all know. So we were taking a look at people, organizations that have customer centricity in their bones, and one of the very foundational aspects of them, of course, is that they're very employee-centric. They give employees all the tools, support, mechanisms around, incentives that support them doing what they need to do for a customer in any given situation and kind of improvising and having latitude. And what we found is at VA, our employees have not had this kind of latitude. We haven't had an employee focus and haven't had that perspective of you have to start by empowering and enabling employees to deliver great customer experiences. So that is a loop and a connection that we are trying to make when we're talking with senior leaders about how to support our employees better. Another thing that we all talk about a lot with these services is delight, of course. We want to delight our customers. Well, at VA, our aspirations are not quite that robust at the moment. We just aspire right now to do right by our customers. That is the bar that we're going for. So how do we do right by all these people who have served and deserve good service experiences? We've come up with 3 very, very simple principles, but we're socializing these through the organization, using these to start these different conversations about how we prioritize efforts. We say we just want to be predictable, consistent, and make it easy to be a customer at VA. We're finding actually that this really resonates for people. Another thing that we really place a great emphasis on is doing immersive research. So we want a lot of thick, qualitative data about who our customers are. This hasn't lived in VA before. It hasn't been a capability that's existed. There's one antecedent to this at the VA Center for Innovation. It's a small and mighty group led by Amber Slining, who's here, who was pushing this idea of experimenting with human-centered design and design research 2 years ago. VA Center for Innovation produced a report because it's the government and people love reports. But it was a beautifully designed report, and it actually showed the power of presenting information in a way that is familiar and comfortable to people, but like with a very designerly twist that made all the difference in terms of the impact that it's had throughout the organization. So following on that research 2 years ago, last fall, I went out on the road with 5 other researchers. We spent several weeks. We crossed the country. We talked with over 100 veterans from all eras and branches of service about their experiences with VA. What was working, what wasn't working, what did they expect, what did they need? And we also tried to find people through VA, customers of VA's networks who weren't using VA services. So if you're not using the services, why aren't you using the services? That was something that we really sought to understand as well. So we created the kinds of things that designers typically create when we do this work that we delivered for Veterans Day last year. We created personas, and I have to say that they had a really great impact. We printed them on cards. We handed them around like crazy to the leadership team. Everybody loved them, and I took it as a great compliment when somebody at VA told me, "Your persona cards have gone viral." I was like, is that possible? But thank you. Just to say that like they were resonating for people. This portrait of who the customers were and how they were accessing VA services, because I think it was the first time that people could see thinking beyond sort of traditional demographic slices. I think VA has sort of a typical pattern of thinking a World War II veteran needs this, an OAF veteran needs this, a woman veteran from OAF needs this. And so this kind of showed these different people share a lot of the same needs for service provision, but they may need them delivered in slightly different ways as well. So lastly, building this creative muscle around co-design within the organization, we're beginning to roll out human-centered design training. So we know this has to be attached to projects that people are already doing, otherwise it's just like an abstract thing, and we don't need another abstract thing. And no one at VA needs like yet another training just to have a training. But we really do want to deeply infuse these design mindsets and flexibility of thinking, risk-taking, small bets, like all of that stuff really into the culture. So we're just beginning this journey, doing a training in a couple weeks and planning for more throughout the next year, as well as beginning another year of design research and interventions in the field to deepen that persona work and really expand on it. It was just a really amazing experience to be out in the field. These are just a few of the people that we spoke with, and I mean, I've done a lot of research in a lot of industries in my career, but I think there's been something profoundly moving and just sort of character shaping, I think, in a way, with the research that I did last fall, because people share such personal stories of the things that they've been through, and those experiences they're deep. I mean, I've listened to women talk to me about military sexual trauma. They've cried. I've cried. I've listened to lots of guys tell us stories about being blown up, their friends being blown up, people going back to school, trying to get the support they need from our psychological services. It really is a big responsibility to serve these people, and these are just absolutely incredible human beings. So it's just a deep, deep honor to work with them. And we're also doing a lot of co-design. I think many people talked about that yesterday, actually, because there's so many people at VA who want to be engaged in a design process. They've got all kinds of ideas, but they just haven't had these mechanisms and venues to get their good ideas into motion and make something really happen with them and see them through. So we're doing a lot of co-design with people who have all different kinds of expertise throughout the organization because there are these bright spots that are everywhere around care, innovation, around prosthetics, and so we're just trying to find those, link them up, and amplify those efforts with our work.
All right, so we're going to quickly run through how we're going to use all of the design work that Sarah talked about. So strategically, we are doing the thing. We're thinking about what should the customer journey be through VA. And what we've said as our goal is to build trusted, lifelong relationships with veterans. And that lifelong part in particular is one that we're trying to help people get their heads around because the government is, the government is in a lifelong relationship with its citizens. Operationally, we are doing some enterprise efforts. We're building a website, which I realize for most people in the room actually isn't that exciting. As folks said, digital experiences are just one touch point, but there are 433 differently managed and operated websites that veterans have to navigate. That is craziness. So Sarah and her team are building vets.gov, which will launch in a minimum viable product on Veterans Day, 11/11. Go check it out and watch us build it in progress, because that's another thing we're building into everything that we're doing is bring Agile and not sitting in a conference room thinking about what veterans might want, but actually building it with them and testing it with them. We're also working along individual product and service lines. As Sarah said, we're a tiny, tiny team, so this has not yet gotten all of the attention we want. One of the things I'll give a plug on is we want to redesign the mental health experience. First at VA, but I think everyone agrees in general this is something that we as a society haven't yet figured out. Finally, out in the field, the employees who are doing all of the really, really hard work, they need a lot of help and support. If they aren't being supported, they're not able to help our customers. And that one-to-one interaction is one that is incredibly hard to do and hard to do consistently, but we're going to take that on.
So we've been working, with this top-down and bottom-up perspective, and what's really interesting about this whole ecosystem is that there is so much work happening at the federal, local, and state level. There are so many ways to get involved. Out of the ashes of healthcare.gov has become this movement. It's still a little bit under the radar right now, but a movement in the United States to create better citizen services. So for us, I think it was a really easy decision to stay in government and be a part of that. It's really exciting. The potential for impact is absolutely huge. It feels like we're at the crest of this wave. It's a new era in government. We are breaking ground and writing history, and we need a lot more people to come join us, so please think about it. Thanks.